Welcome to Navigate Your Roadmap to Success with Dell Technologies, presented by Dell Technologies and AMD. I'm your host, Ed Hannon, and I'm joined today by a team of awesome people. We'll start with Alan Klingerman. He's the Chief Technology Strategist, PowerEdge and Workloads for North American Channels with Dell Technologies. We also have David Melendrez, Account Manager with AMD. And I'm also happy to be joined by Darren Livingston, VP of Engineering with Converge Technology Solutions. I can't thank Alan, David, and Darren enough for being with me today. We're going to get right into the first segment. It's talking about how Dell Technologies, AMD, and Converge are coming together for data center dominance. And David, this first question is going to be for you. AMD's really been doing well in the channel recently, just performing, frankly, on an outstanding level. What are some of the primary compelling reasons that customers and channel partners are widely adopting, AMD Epic?
Well, good, great question. Glad to be here, Ed. Thank you very much for having us. I was on this call the other day with the Dell channel folks, and one of the gentlemen said, AMD is white hot. So I think that the channel is definitely seeing some things in that regard. It hasn't always been that way. We were in the 11G with Dell, their 11th generation servers with Opteron. We had to exit the data center, went back to the lab, created our new processor technology. We refer to it for the data center products as Epic. We've done a lot of great things with that. But when you think of compelling reasons, I look at two sets of reasons. On one hand, there's innovation, there's choice, and there's competition. Basically, AMD has created a processor unlike anything that's been out there before. And so that design change has really caught a lot of people's attention. And by getting that attention, now you're seeing there's choice out there from a processor family. Yes, there are others than x86, but in x86, it's no longer that unipolar world. And so by having this choice, what now has happened at my level at AMD, at Alan's level at Dell, at Darren's level at Converged, is you're seeing this drive for competition. And it could be in all kinds of elements. I mean, there's market share shifting going on right now for all of us. And AMD is driving a big part of that for processors. There's also the competition in the roadmap and the execution and what products are coming when. And then finally, you're just seeing this overall acceptance by customers now that, hey, I do have an opportunity to go somewhere else for my processing needs. And when you look at that, that's the stuff, the compelling reasons on the other hand. And those include performance, value, and security. So by taking that innovative design, we've created something that is much more powerful from a performance perspective, be it just raw compute, be it best-in-class memory, I/O, bandwidth, you name it. And so that, I think, has really caught people's attention. But along with that, you could very well say, well, I'm not a big performance user, but there's the value aspect. If I could give you twice the performance for half the price, wouldn't that be kind of interesting? But then there's also hey, if I'm consolidating, I don't need to buy as many servers. I can consolidate. I can save on power. I can save on cooling. And so then it becomes kind of interesting in that regard as well. And then finally, there's just regular licensing costs and things like that. If I can lower licensing costs, there's that value in play. And then all around that wrapper is security. Data security is paramount. Everybody's concerned about it. And if you could get a processor in a machine like a Dell PowerEdge that offers their capabilities on security along with AMD's capabilities on security, that is a very, very awesome machine. So I look at those two sets as kind of that double trifecta, if you want to call it that, in terms of the innovation, the choice, the competition, aligned with performance, value, and security.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Great answer. Let's bring the Dell Technologies perspective in on this. Alan, I want to ask this next one for you. What workloads from where you're sitting are really continuing to drive on-premise data center platforms now and into the future?
It's a great question, Ed, and thanks for hosting us today. I loved the session already with David, and that was a great answer on all the amazing technologies that we're integrating from AMD into the PowerEdge family. And when we think about compute and in the compute layer, right, workloads drive everything today. In fact, one of the things that we're doing within the Dell family is we have our own transformational effort, right? Trying to take our sales teams and transform them through a process we call the first mile enablement to really get them focused in what we refer to as the data-centric workload space. And when you think about data-centric workloads, right, it's all about the data. The data is core of everything we do to help companies drive revenue and profit for their organization. And how are they able to leverage that in different ways, right? Through especially DevOps approaches and new custom applications that we're all used to using as consumers now. Those are really what drives that digital transformation. And I think you probably have heard it from Michael and other leaders at Dell Technologies that we've seen faster digital transformation because of the challenges we've been living through in the last 9 months than we've seen, frankly, in the last 5 years. And I think it's because they have to in order to innovate and compete in the space. Everybody in every industry needs to think differently of how do they deliver their products and services. And when I think about the kind of 4 key areas in our transformation efforts that we focus on, and this is what I talk with our partner leaders on throughout North America, is really in 4 key areas. The first one's in high performance compute. It's not just for the traditional scientific and academic community, even with all the great things it helped us do from a healthcare perspective in these challenging times, right? To get to a vaccine, it really helped power, right? HPC helped power some of that scientific work. But it's moving out into other industries and verticals and really is becoming the predominant architecture for high performance data analytics and artificial intelligence. Hybrid cloud is another interesting thing. Everybody wants to understand how do they easily move their workloads on and off prem. There's lots of moving pieces that are challenging for the customer, and we're making it extremely easy now with the Dell Technology Cloud Platform, underpinned by VMware Cloud Foundation and certainly native technologies like Kubernetes now. Business applications remain primary to every organization, right? When you think about the 3 biggest ones, and we'll call them out of SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL, which might be more of an OLAP layer, but we start thinking about all of those business applications, those are still predominantly driven on-prem. High performance data analytics and artificial intelligence, can't leave that out, as the biggest market opportunity. And when I think about the TAM behind these 4 areas, it's a $750 billion total addressable market. So there's a massive opportunity for all of our channel partners to go after with Dell Technologies and AMD. And when I think about that, there's 2 last things I'll leave you with. The first one is part of that first mile enablement is getting to the new modern data center contact, because it's no longer just people in IT. It's about changing the business, right? In order to help the IT team solve their shadow IT problems, we have to reach deeper into the business, right? It's like if you looked at this most recent technology business review research study they did with a group of customers, it was from the functional VP or business unit owner who owned that IT budget now to go solve a problem for the institution. So how do I go do that and drive that through IT in a successful fashion, right? So we need to reach out to different people. And then from the last thing, I think it's extremely important of what architecture do you bring around these workloads? They're all different. It's scale up versus scale out. If you don't know what that means, great things for us to have a conversation on in the future. In our portfolio, right, it's not just about the amazing things we're doing with hyper-converged when VxRail with VMware together, right? Just great platform. But it's also about 3-tier, which still remains a very relevant part of the market. By the way, if you look at those 2 areas from a total addressable market perspective, according to IDC in 2019, Converge and hyperconverge is about a $15 billion market. HCI made up about $7 billion of it. On the other side, if I go compute and storage, overall server market was $73 billion and $28 billion sitting in storage. So you can think about those numbers and metrics, and you can see how 3-tier is still very prominent because it's what really drives those data-centric workloads, right? Because I need to have the flexibility at the component level. I need to be able to independently scale compute and storage based on the requirements of those apps.
Excellent. I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet. I want to follow up and talk about some specific things. But so given all that with the workloads, how does PowerEdge and AMD fit into those workloads?
It's a great question, Ed. We'll talk a lot about PowerEdge, but let's just look at it as one thing about compute, right, in general. I kind of taglined it as servers are the engines of progress. Because if I'm going to extract value for the customer out of the data, what does it require? A lot of compute. I have to do a lot of scientific research. If I'm going to build and emulate the human brain in a neural network to build out a large HPC environment for AI, for deep learning, guess what? I've got to have something to get that done. And I have the data. Where's my compute coming from? And man, just amazing technologies from AMD to help us make that real. And when we think about our three key tenets when we go to market as PowerEdge, regardless of the technologies we choose, we really look at it in three areas, right? To help the customer in a scalable business architecture. So we take the best of breed technologies, just like one of our great partners that we're talking about today in AMD, and bringing them into the platform to be able to take advantage of that for our customers' workloads. And something I call the invisible enterprise or effortless management, being able to manage and orchestrate throughout the entire life cycle of the product, the solution itself. So imagine if a customer is using IT service automation processes through ServiceNow and being able to take and provision a bare metal group of servers through their ServiceNow console, and how powerful that be of now nobody at a keyboard ever even having to provision those servers. So that's what we're trying to do from a overall manageability perspective. And then we'll talk about this one later, but integrated security is key to this. And what AMD has brought to the table is absolutely amazing there. And we just enabled this in some new things with vSphere 7 Update 1. The other thing, when I think about the specific platform capabilities that we took advantage of from AMD, the first thing I think of is the dense core count, right? Back to that capacity. Like, number one, value, huge, but also just how many cores and threads can I fit into a single socket? It's amazing to see what we can do now in a single socket platform. In fact, if you might have seen from our CTO of PowerEdge, Robert Hormuth, he's put it on his blog and on LinkedIn, he has a whole thing of a 5 to 10 year outlook that why is everything not going to be a single socket server in the future? And certainly AMD is leading the charge there with that kind of dense core. The other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that is their Infinity Fabric, right? Being able to connect that and do different things with that fabric of not just connection points between the CPU, but to be able to extend that out. And I'll kind of reference one configuration where we took advantage of that. And then finally, just again, I'm going to allude back to the security features that I will talk about later. And certainly the last thing I'll kind of call out of that innovation of us wrapping some of the features that I just described into the platforms. And I just talked to a customer about this one. It's a great example where they were trying to go a software-defined platform and a number of nodes using data core software. They've been out in the market for quite some time. And in that SDS type environment, he wanted no oversubscription in his NVMe drives. And in order to achieve that, I need a number of PCIe slots. And AMD has enabled us to increase the number of PCIe slots, right, or PCIe lanes available for my NVMe drives. So we were able to, via what we call the XGMI configuration that's available on our PowerEdge platforms, to be able to build a non-oversubscribed 24-drive NVMe platform for him to continue to scale out on. Really one of the first in industry to give you 160 lanes of unoversubscribed PCIe lanes in a dense NVMe cabinet. So pretty exciting to see what we're doing to leverage all the technologies they bring to market.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. I'm going to bring Darren into this. Darren, what can you tell us about Converged Technology Solutions so that our audience knows a little bit more about what they do and what you do with the company?
Thank you, Ed. Good afternoon. And once again, thank you for inviting me to today's event. Converged Technology Solutions is actually a North American-wide solutions provider. We're based both in Canada and the United States. We started off in that traditional integrated reseller play, and we've expanded. And through that expansion, we've really focused in on analytics, AI, security, hybrid cloud. Definitely to Alan's point earlier about the AI, we definitely have quite a large practice. We've got some really super smart guys that blow your minds up, everyone's mind away. Some of the models that the workloads that they've been able to help clients with. So, but yeah, no, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. And I'm going to follow up with a quick question for you. So we've heard from Alan and we've heard from David, but I want to ask you what it's been like working with them for you. So how has the AMD Epic been performing with your customer base, and where have you seen the biggest adoption?
Sure. No, I'm very happy to comment on that. So a lot of our clients definitely have been again, David's made the comment, so has Alan, about the security. Security's been very foremost. Everybody's very concerned about it. And I mean, AMD's brought forth some awesome solutions, especially for us. We've been using a lot of it at the hypervisor level. We've been running AI workloads on top of VMware 7, and we've been taking advantage of the security features that AMD has brought forth between the hypervisor, secure memory. We've definitely been we've been testing and evaluating and running some customer workload on it. Performance, I mean, if you ask our data scientists, all they want is cores. That's all they don't really care about drives. They don't care about anything but cores. That's all they care about. So, I mean, definitely the more core density on per chip is a massive advantage for AMD. We've really enjoyed that. The one thing that I want to point out is definitely on the facilities, the power, the cooling. I've had a couple of conversations with some of our clients that they've really 2021 they're really wanting to focus a little bit more on the carbon footprint, the amount of power, amount of cooling. That's something that they're really starting to take into consideration, which is a little bit different. Back to Alan's comment about the single socket server comments. We've had clients that are very open to that type of approach now, rather than being the big dense jam as much as you can into a U type approach. They're taking a little bit different approach to it now going forward. That decarbonization approach, if you want to say. I also want to add to that, definitely we're looking forward to seeing the AMD GPUs that are coming out in the future. We're definitely very, very excited to see what that, along with the chipsets, bring as well. So,
excellent. And now we're going to move to the next segment, which is I've titled it "Secure Superior Performance with Dell Technologies and AMD." And this one, we're going to loop back around and go to David for the first question. David, Alan talked a little bit about security before. It's definitely been a big concern this year. It's just with everything in the world that's going on, it's been a really hot button issue, even hotter than it was before that, when it was already a popular topic. Per what we talked about earlier, what are some of the specifics around the security benefits AMD Epic brings to customers?
Security it's always been a pain point for customers. I got into the Epic game here about 3 years ago at AMD, and it was interesting because there was a lot of the side channel execution attacks, vulnerabilities, etc. Epic had just launched in the summer of 17 with our first gen Naples, and at that time we introduced some new features with our processors, and those have evolved into our current generation, second gen Rome. But there's a secure root of trust. And basically what that does is, that's like the Overwatch, if you want to think about it. It's just checking everything to make sure, hey, nothing has changed. There's nothing that's been introduced that will corrupt anything, and, proceed. Otherwise, shut down. Then there's some encryption capabilities. When you bring data into memory with Epic now, you have that opportunity to encrypt all that data in memory. So it's instantaneously kind of encrypted. It's a feature that is in Naples, it's in Rome, it'll be in our next generation Milan. And so having that level there. But it goes a step further. Obviously, especially with the work from home environment we're in right now, you're seeing so much happening in the virtualization field in terms of VDI and HCI, et cetera. And Alan made a comment about it earlier. There's a capability now with VMware to be able to encrypt virtual machines. And that becomes even more interesting because now, whether you have somebody trying to hack the hypervisor or some unscrupulous administrator wanting to just kind of peek in and, hey, what have you got in there? What data are you working on today? What they see now is nothing. It's basically encrypted data. So you go from encryption on your drive, which hopefully everybody has, to your RAM, which is encrypted now with Epic, to your VM, which is encrypted now with Epic. And you've got this data security story now that's pretty damn solid in terms of the protections that you have out there. It doesn't alleviate the pain point that security has, but it definitely takes a whole lot of heat out of that fire that causes people pain.
As we head into the next year, 2021, as we record this, what's next for AMD?
Oh gosh, a lot. I mentioned Milan. It's our third generation processor in the Epic family. So we'll introduce that. So we continue that role of new product introductions. Nothing significant change in terms of the processing technology. It's still going to be a 7 nanometer. It'll cap out at 64 cores, but there's some tweaks, and you'll see that sometime in the Q1 timeframe. As Darren mentioned, we are getting back into data center GPU. We've introduced AMD Instinct MI100 at Supercompute 2020, and that's an AI DL/ML card. And you're going to be seeing some competition, just like you're seeing in the CPU market, in the GPU market as well. So then that becomes very, very significant. And then you're going to see some big projects. Alan talked about HPC and hyperscalers and exascale. Our first product that's rolled out in terms of with Frontier, with one of the national labs in the U.S. So, there's a lot of momentum built up here and continuing to roll. And I'm excited. I've gotten to the habit of saying, the best is yet to come. And I really think 2021 is going to be that. And into 22, we've got Genoa, our 4th gen Zen product, out launching at that time. And there'll be a 5th one down the road. So excitement for sure. That momentum continues, that competition continues, that innovation continues, and that choice definitely continues. It's a good time for AMD. It's a good time for our OEM partners. It's a good time for our channel partners. And it's a great time for customers.
I'm sensing a theme. Milan, Genoa. I'm sensing a theme here. I don't know what it is. Makes me think of a country with a boot, but I don't know. David, great stuff. That was great. Alan, I'm going to swing over to you now for this next one. The security features included in the AMD Epic platform are pretty differentiated. How are those combined with the PowerEdge security tenant that you talked about earlier?
No, it's important to understand. In fact, before I started my security discussion, let me just do a shout out to David there. While he mentioned kind of what's coming next year, you can imagine we're going to have PowerEdge products wrapped around that announcement. And I would tell you, even though he said, hey, same core count, like some increase, I can't share benchmark results, but stay tuned. A lot of interesting results we've seen from IPC improvements on the new generation, and pretty excited about what that's going to bring to market for us. So stay tuned. So from a security perspective, we take a very measured, integrated security approach on PowerEdge from day one, from the inception in our factory, right, as we're building the products themselves. So that goes all the way down to our secure supply chain. And we actually have a whole documented process. If a customer is ever interested or a partner wants to know more about what it is, be glad to share some of that documentation. But when we think about that layered approach, I start thinking about the fundamentals of what we did to enable some of the features that David talked about, right? We still have to wrap things in our platforms to make that real from the customer. We do it at the heart of everything from a manageability perspective, as I alluded to earlier, with something called the iDRAC, or Integrated Dell Remote Access Controller. We're on our 9th generation now. Easy way to think about it is a computer within a computer. It's almost like a smartphone that's in a secure enclave that lives on the system board. So it's out-of-band management, right? Fully safe and secure in a C2 type fashion. And when you think about that, what does that give me the capability to do? Lots of things to the platform, right? To make that invisible enterprise real. And because it's in that secure enclave, it allows me to do a lot of things from a security perspective to make things even more secure for the customer, right? That layered approach is important. One of those things, even the most basic level, is think about just even physical security in the data center. People don't even necessarily host their own data centers. They're sitting in sometimes next to each other in the same rack, right? And in some type of hosted facility. So just things like an intrusion switch locked to iDRAC to say, hey, if somebody opened that box, lock down the platform, nothing else can change. And by the way, go notify the administrators of the platform. But then it goes deeper, right? So like think about this of even just isolated domain capabilities, so that if I have tenants, right, especially next to each other or even within the same platform, I can make sure that I'm blocking system reconfiguration so that any host operating system features where I might be able to make a change can't happen, right? I block those changes from occurring. And that's just a baseline within PowerEdge. And here's what's interesting. We just announced this week a number of new security enhancements across Dell Technologies and specifically within PowerEdge. A couple of them that we layered in here are important to understand. The first one is not just the secure supply chain, but we took that next level down that we're referring to as now the Dell Technologies Secured Component Verification. This is across both our PowerEdge and our client systems. So if a customer says, hey, I'm really concerned to what happens in transit, right? the box that I arrived at my facility, is it the same exact machine that left your factory? So we can show them from an end-to-end perspective what that looks like and verify that every component in the system has not been changed or tampered with. Great new feature integrated at the factory to get that done. We also have some secure boot customizations, because one of the things we've heard from those workloads is, think about where UEFI came from. That was very much a Microsoft initiative, but not everybody runs Microsoft operating systems. So we have within the capabilities in iDRAC now to do a customer supplied key for non-Microsoft operating systems. So it really provides them that flexibility and that segregation from Microsoft if they choose to do that. We also added two-factor authentication to iDRAC, which was a big move and a big request from our customers. So finally, I'll kind of wrap to all of the things we're doing at AMD. So when I think about Open Managed Secure Enterprise Key Manager, this is how we make those features that David alluded to earlier real, right? So this is where we have an external key manager linked with iDRAC, our secure enclave, right? That supports external key managers from both Gemalto and Thales. And then with that key management system, it provides that encryption key for those two areas that David mentioned, right? Whether we're trying to leverage it for secure memory encryption, SME, from AMD, or through secured encrypted virtualization with SEV with AMD. So pretty cool technologies wrapped around what they brought to market.
That was amazing. That was amazing. You guys, no wonder you guys are where you are in this whole thing. That just blew me away. So I want to ask you one more question. How do you see vSphere 7 impacting the PowerEdge AMD platform and the workloads that you've talked about previously?
You can imagine vSphere 7 was one of the most profound releases we've had in a very long time. The ability to now have a native EKS environment managed, within the same control plane as my VMs, and providing that same cloud-like experience on premise is huge. But one thing that I think a lot of people miss, like all the Kubernetes and containers on-prem got all the excitement and buzz, right? And hey, don't get me wrong, that's amazing technology, and we can do a lot of things with that. Even think about Microsoft SQL big data clusters, setting within that and presenting up a layer, right, to automate that process of provisioning storage in the container environment. But just things like the key metrics, they have increased, right, to do scale out and scale up in VMware to support the most mission critical workloads and what VMware is always called monster VMs. For those of us that were administrators at one point in time in this x86 space, we know what that means and why we frankly ran away from those mission critical apps in x86. But think about this one. Just the key metrics in Update 1 supports now 768 CPUs per host. I don't think we're going to run out of that one for a while. 96 hosts per cluster. Again, expanding the cluster side. That's a pretty big workload domain. I'm probably going to break that down. But hey, if you want it, that's pretty big expandability. And now what just came out with Update 1, 24 terabytes of RAM support, which is massive. So think about large in-memory database footprint setting in vSphere. That's real, right? We can go get that done right now because there's not many environments that I run to where they have 24 terabytes of memory. The other thing is, and two big enhancements that came in when you think about these monster VMs. The first one is think about the ability to break up workloads by workload domains, being able to provide some type of true SLAs for the application right within that workload domain. So if I have a mission critical application like SAP, I might run that in my stretch cluster. But if I have a little OLAP, something from a small data mart for one business unit and it goes offline, I probably don't care. So I won't even DR that. So you have the flexibility by workload domain to build out your environment and build the right SLA for the application tier. The other two things were pretty foundational changes to VMware, and I think, again, they got kind of overlooked. In vSphere 7 Enterprise, there's one feature called Enhanced vMotion. Those of us that tried to use monster VMs and some of these, especially large database consolidations in virtual machines, we know one of the big pains, you go to vMotion and what do you get? stun lag time, right? Because it's got to take that, lock all the transactions, quiesce it, move it to the new node and bring it in. And that takes time, right? Because it's data to move over. They've significantly improved it with something they have called enhanced vMotion. We've seen performance increasement and significant performance increases over 3x in our labs with enhanced vMotion. And the last one is improved DRS. When you think about distributed resource scheduling in combination with vMotion, people have lived by this, right? To be able to put things and VMs and nodes and allow it to balance itself. Well, the big challenge with DRS, go back to where it came from. The original DRS version, way back in vSphere, is because these x86 compute platforms weren't very powerful. I needed to scale out. I didn't have 64 cores in a single socket. I needed to scale out to a number of nodes, right, to get this thing to even do something. So the premise was just balancing it based on those small footprints and low power. Well, things have completely changed, as we've talked about in a session. So wouldn't it be great if DRS was completely rethought and redesigned from the ground up for workloads? So it actually takes workload SLA requirements in different nodes you might have within your pod structure. So improved DRS and enhanced vMotion, probably two of the biggest things to help make monster VMs real.
Excellent. Alan, thanks so much. Darren, I'm going to ask you the next couple questions here. First one, you had mentioned earlier that Converge has a large data and analytics and AI practice. How do you think AMD is going to impact the on-premise platform choice?
Great question. So I'm going to take a step back because working with clients, a lot of clients in this space, we find that there's a lot of times when clients just put something out into a public cloud as a POC. And before they know it, it starts to grow on them. And then they start looking at the financial part of that aspect, performance. There's various reasons why they're like, okay, we're going to bring this on-prem. With AMD, with just the sheer number of cores per socket that they have in the PowerEdge servers, we have a lot of clients that are really, really excited about bringing it back in and just continually, innovating on that platform that app that they've started in the public cloud.
Easy enough. And then last question, in addition to great performance, security, TCO, AMD has a real price advantage in the market. How has that impacted your margins? And do you have opportunity to make more margin on the AMD Epic solutions?
I think it's fantastic for both customers, partners, everybody in the market. We see great benefits for the customers, as well as to the partners, to the business, right? To have access to these really, these high performing components. They're priced very, very competitively. And the savings that we've realized in a lot of our deals, based with PowerEdge with AMD, has been reinvested into innovating, into further hardware into the client base, which is always great for the client. When the client is able to continually innovate and bring forth improvements to their business, we become even more of a trusted advisor for them, right? So that's been greatly successful for us.
Excellent. Darren, David, Alan, thank you all so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, but we're all going to say goodbye. But once again, thanks so much for watching. To all of you watching this, best wishes on a happy, healthy, and successful new year. I'm Ed Hannon, and on behalf of Alan, David, and Darren, thanks for watching. And you've been watching Navigate Your Roadmap to Success with Dell Technologies, presented by Dell Technologies and AMD. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.